Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our State Government Committee for Tuesday, March 22. And with that, let's see if we can begin the committee process by turning our attention to Mr. Colton down there for a roll call, sir.
Representatives Alexander, Beck, Bricken, Carr, Carringer, Chisholm, Cooper, Halford, Helton, Holsclaw, Hulsey, Jernigan, Johnson, Littleton, Marsh, Moon, Powell, Wendell, Vice Chairman Eldridge, Chairman Kiesling. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. All right. Wow. Okay. We've got just a few things that I'd like to that I'm going to mention, but first I want to give you, the members, an opportunity for any. Do you have any personal orders or announcements, members? From the members. Oh, wow. Pretty quiet today. All right. Let us, we certainly want to remember your colleague members, and that is Rebecca Alexander. Let's please keep her in our prayers. I think and I understand she's doing rather well, but improvement. It may be a couple of weeks before we see her, but the quicker the better. We hope for a wonderful return. And Representative Beck is not here with us, but I had I wanted to wish him yesterday. I believe it was his birthday, so we wanted to wish him a wonderful 60th. With that, many of you have had shadowed your doors today, members from your electric cooperatives from across your districts, youth leadership students, and they're still moving around, as well as 4-H, some of our 4-Hers. So 4-H Congress ongoing in Murfreesboro. And then, as I say, we've had our youth leadership students. So we wanted to thank them for taking time to come and visit us. Finally, I want to introduce to you a special person from my household who is shadowing me this week from beautiful Fentress County within House Districts 38 and 41. We have in front row to your right, members, Mr. Max Jones. So, Max, if I don't want to embarrass you, but if you would you please stand and be recognized, sir? We want to thank you for being with us this week. Thank you. All right. With that, I say we get started here, don't you? We are on item number one. Item number one, House Bill 2743, by everyone's friend, as I've introduced him before, in that manner. Chairman Hicks, you are recognized, sir, and you have a motion already and a second. I see you're running with, this one is running with an amendment. Could you please give us that drafting code, please?
Yes, sir. It looks like it is 015127.
That corresponds. That is correct. Do I have a motion? Let's get this on the bill. Motion, and we do. We have a second. How do you want us to handle this? You want us to go ahead and get it on the bill, Chairman?
Please,
Hold
sir.
it. Oops.
Where did it come from? Public health. Well, just put it on.
Okay, sorry, we thought we had just a little bit of confusion, but we don't. With that, the chairman asked to go ahead and let's get it on the bill. So we got a motion and a second. I see no objections to the calling of the question. Let us vote. Those in favor of amendment number 2, actually, it's number 2, drafting code 15127. Those in favor, please say aye. Opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. And Chairman Hicks, it is on the bill. And if you would proceed and explain to us.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 2743 Under current law, the TCRS Board of Trustees establishes the investment policy for the retirement systems funds, which may but does not currently include the divestment from certain investments. The amendment, the bill as it currently stands, allows the investment committee for the TCRS Board of Trustees to expeditiously divest from any investment it has with an entity found to be doing business with or supporting a country sanctioned by the United States Department of Treasury.
Okay, very good. Any questions to the sponsor? I see none. Are we ready? Yes, we do. I'm sorry. Chairman Holsclaw, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. And do you feel that the treasurer picked you to carry this bill based on your knowledge or the extreme amount of time you put into styling your hair?
Chairman Hicks, I don't know if you want to address that or not. I will give you the opportunity not to if you want to do that. I'm just kidding. Go ahead, sir.
I believe I'll take that option.
Will you? Okay. Follow up to that, Chairman Holsclaw.
Thank you, Chairman. No.
Okay. We've got a call for the question. Let's go. Those in favor of House Bill 2743 as amended, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. The ayes have it, and you are on your way to calendar and rules, Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for being with us today. All right. Now, before we move to number 2, your chairman forgot, Chairman Halford. Chairman here forgot about this day in history. So if you gentlemen and ladies would allow me just for a moment, I want to begin in the year 1765. In an effort to raise funds to pay off debts and defend the vast new American territories, the British government passes the Stamp Act. With its passage, the colonists, grumbling, finally became an articulated response to what saw as Britain's attempt to undermine their independence. They raised the issue of taxation without representation and formed societies throughout the colonies to rally against the British government. 1934, the first Masters Golf Championship tees off in Augusta, Georgia. And finally, the year was 1941, and it was James Stewart. Yes, the Jimmy Stewart, as everyone knows, is he's inducted into the Army, becoming the first major American movie star to wear a military uniform in WW2, World War II. That, members, is your today's in history. Let us move to, on your calendar, let us move to item number 2. And the number here is House Bill 2569. We have a motion, Chairman Reagan, already, and a second. Now, we've got an amendment that it reads, rewrites the bill. And that, would you give us that drafting code, please?
Yes, sir. It's drafting code 16046.
16046, and that is correct. Since it rewrites the bill, let's go ahead and get it on. Members, do I have a motion? Yes, I do have a motion and a second. So, any objections to the calling of the question? I see none. Let us vote. Those in favor of amendment was 16046, please say aye. Opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. And Chairman Reagan, it is now on the bill. So you come to us from last week. You wrote it, and here we are, and we're happy to see you again, sir. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And because of last week's discussions, this amendment was changed from the previous amendment. I will go through the entire bill, but for the sake of what was mentioned last week, on the second page of this amendment, subparagraph 4 was to address the concerns there. Basically, it says it preempts, this bill shall not preempt any state law in existence at the time of the effective date of this act to provide preferences to an individual or group of individuals with respect to public contracting and the procurement of public contracts. That was put on there to address the concern that was raised. Now, very briefly, let me start from the beginning here.
Sure, go right ahead.
This bill basically clarifies current law. It drags, if you will, pardon the term, pieces and parts from other portions of the code together and ensures that we have an understanding of what is clearly stated but scattered in our code. For example, subparagraph A of this bill makes it clear what a subunit of state government is. And it makes it clear also that all subunits of state government are responsible for ensuring that they comply with state law. And in particular, I'll call your attention to the last statement there, that a public or an entity or an instrumentality of the state of Tennessee is one that derives its authority from the state of Tennessee. Therefore, that includes counties, cities, school boards, executive boards, and commissions, et cetera. That is covered in other places in our code, but this pulls it all together so there can be no question about exactly what is covered by state law and what entities have to enforce and comply with state law. The second paragraph of this, subparagraph B, is actually a direct copy from Title IV of our code, and it states that the state shall not discriminate against or grant preference to treatment to an individual, group of individuals based on the individual's groups or individual or groups, race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of any aspect of public employment, public education, or public contracting, with the exception of the portion I just read for public contracting. This section does not prohibit bona fide occupational requirements based on sex that are reasonably necessary. It does not invalidate any court order that is or consent decree that is in full force at the time this goes into effect. It does not prohibit action to establish or maintain eligibility for any federal program or federally funded program where such ineligibility would result in the loss of federal funds to the state. And the portion I just read you, it does not preempt state law concerning contracting and procurements. Section D has a cause of private action, and I will point out, again, this basically is just stating what exists already. There's already rationale for private action for violation of this in both federal and state law. This simply states it. However, I will point out that I have added a restriction in the portion that I put in here. If you were to look at this, you will see that it's restricted to compensatory damages pursuant to Title 29, Chapter 39. The idea behind this is if someone is going to sue private action, a lawyer who is looking to maximize their intake would probably go under federal law rather than state law, because this does have a limit on that. That is an explanation of the bill. By way of emphasis, let me read you just a couple of excerpts here. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In case you didn't recognize, that comes from the U.S. Declaration of Independence. Another quote worth considering. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Again, most of you recognize that as a speech from Martin Luther King Jr. In January of this year, the U.S. Supreme Court agreed to hear 2 cases seeking to end race-based affirmative action in higher education. The group Students for Fair Admission is challenging admission programs at Harvard and the University of North Carolina. The fact that the Supreme Court has accepted these cases for adjudication is an indication that they may think it's time for this to be over. And I will quote here from Chief Justice Roberts. He's written, "It is a sordid business, this divvying us up by race." The court's only African-American justice, Clarence Thomas, has written, "Every time the government places citizens on racial registers, makes race relevant to the provisions and burdens or benefits, it demeans us all." The late Justice Antonin Scalia wrote, "Discrimination on the basis of race is illegal, immoral, unconstitutional, and inherently wrong and destructive of a democratic society." This bill that I have brought before you, as I mentioned, brings bits and pieces together from other portions of our code to make it patently clear that those quotes that I just read you are part and parcel of our respect for law in the state of Tennessee. With that explanation, Mr. Chairman and committee, I stand ready to answer questions and ask for your approval.
Thank you, Chairman Reagan. And yes, we do have some requests from the committee standing by, and we will begin by turning our attention to Representative Cooper, you are recognized, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Representative Reagan, since I heard you say something about parcels, I didn't quite understand that. But I want to know if this
Can you get that mic a
still,
little closer there?
if this still amends Title VI in any way.
Chairman Reagan, did you understand the question?
Yes, I think the question she asked was whether or not it amended Title VI. And the answer to the question, if I understand you correctly, Title VI is a federal law. We cannot amend it at the state level. This bill basically does not change any federal law that is before us. As I mentioned in the bill itself, in subparagraph C3, it says it does not prohibit any action required to establish or maintain eligibility for any federal program or federally funded program where ineligibility would result in a loss of federal funds to the state.
Oh, okay. Representative Cooper, you are recognized. Follow up.
Chair, then does this mean that part of this bill, this legislation, will it directly affect contractors or in any way by not providing preferences for those contractors?
You're recognized, Chairman.
All right, if I understood the question correctly, I think it was, would this bill provide impediments for affecting contractors for
That's
not providing
correct.
preference?
Yes.
Again, in subparagraph C4, it directly says it does not preempt any state law in existence at the effective date of this act that provides preference to any individual or group of individuals with respect to public contracting and the procurement of public contracts.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. And back to you, Representative
I think
Cooper.
I heard you mention the word preempt. Could you explain what you mean about preempt this law?
Chairman Reagan.
This law cannot take or force a contract already in existence to be null and void. If the contract is already in existence at the time, and state law requires it to be thus and such for preferences and so forth, this bill cannot preempt that. And that's part of Representative Beck and I's discussion on the Constitution of Tennessee earlier.
Okay.
Representative Cooper.
Then this bill, in fact, anything that was in force prior to this bill.
No, ma'am,
will
it
not
cannot.
affect, but after this bill is passed, it will affect or limit or not provide preferences to contractors.
Chairman Reagan.
Again, if a preference is under a requirement of a court order or to provide or is covered by any kind of federal funding, it does not affect it.
Representative Cooper.
Mr. What I wasn't quite clear on that. After this bill is passed, will it prohibit any preferences to any contractors?
Chairman Reagan.
I can't say that it won't prohibit or any of them because I have no idea what kind of preferences would be put in place. But preferences that are already established in federal law as requirement and preempt any state law that's in existence right now at the effective date of this bill. Now, I can't say what's going to change after that.
Maybe I'm not making myself clear.
Would you like to direct that to our legal
Yes, I
representative?
would.
Of course we can. If there's no objection, let us go out of session and we'll direct Representative Cooper's question to legal. Mr. Mundy, if you would, please.
Thank you, Matt Money from Legal. If I understand your question, you're asking what's the difference between a contract executed now under existing procurement practices where we grant preferences and for instance, a contract that might be executed down the road 4 or 5 years from now. All of the preferences that are in the code as of the effective date of the statute will be preserved in existing contracts and in contracts executed in the future. Now, if the legislature wanted to create some other type of preference in a few years, part of our job as legal services is to be aware of a statute like this that might create some kind of conflict, and we would have to resolve that in drafting the bill.
Okay, if I'm hearing you clearly, what is in place right now is in place, and it cannot be affected by this legislation.
That's correct. Everything,
But after this legislation passed, what happens then with this legislation? What can happen, or what can happen as far as related to the bill that Representative Reagan has brought? After, am I making myself clear now?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Mundy, if you
Hey,
would.
Matt
please.
Money from Legal. It would depend on what the legislature did. If the legislature created a new scheme for some type of preference in contracting that doesn't exist right now, then it could potentially be impacted by this statute if it's passed. But as I said before, if that legislation comes through and is given to our office to draft, we would have to advise the member of the statute and try to resolve any conflict and whether we wanted to make an exception to this statute, just like we do in any other context when we have two conflicting statutes that we have to reconcile.
Okay.
And that's part of our responsibility when we're drafting legislation, is to apprise you guys of those conflicts that exist moving forward.
So,
Representative Cooper.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So that means that you will go back before Title VI was enacted to what we were doing before, until Title VI was enacted. If this bill, this piece of legislation is passed, then some parts of it could be going back prior to Title VI. Did I make myself clear?
Mr. Mundy.
Matt Mundy for the record from Legal. I'm going to answer that in two different parts as I understand the question. Nothing that exists right now is going to be impacted now or in the future in terms of preferences and contracting. Nothing that's contracted for currently, nothing that's contracted for 10 years from now. If, like, for instance, under the Small Business Procurement Act for minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, disabled person-owned businesses, none of that will be impacted now or in the future. In terms of federal law, a lot of things when it comes to Title 6 through 9, for instance, are either, they're either tied to federal dollars for programs that we're required to have, or they're codified in case law. And both of those exceptions are in this bill already. So to the extent that we're required to comply with federal law, for instance, like Title IX or something like that, we couldn't get around it by passing this statute. And there's specific language that makes it clear that we have to comply with those existing court orders that deal with those respective federal laws. And I think that answers your question. If it doesn't, ask me another one.
Okay.
Representative
Go ahead
Cooper.
there. Thank you. And this will be the final one, Mr. Chair, really. I'm just thinking that right now, what you have in place so far will not be deterred at all. It's okay like it is. But his legislation is bringing something to change, to amend. And something is being amended. And I'm trying to find out what's being amended. And if you answer that, fine. If not, that was my last concern.
Mr. Mundy.
What I would say to that is, in terms of existing preferences, everything is going to stay the same. In terms of contracting for public procurement and public contracting, nothing changes now or moving forward under this bill if it passes. As far as the other part of your question as what it's intended to do and intended to change, I would direct those questions to the sponsor.
Follow up, Representative Cooper.
I said that was the last one, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Sure. Are there any other questions to legal while we are out of session? To legal, of course we are. Yes, Representative Beck. Happy birthdays too, by the way.
thank
We
you, thank you.
wished you a happy birthday earlier.
Great people
You're
born
yeah.
great people born in March, Mr.
Oh, I
Chairman.
know. Thank you. Yes. Although a windy month, there's some.
That's exactly. Amen. Amen.
You're recognized, Representative Beck.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, first I want to apologize for being late. I was out whizzing around in those new electric vehicles. And
Oh,
that was
yes.
just really a great time.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Number one. And number two is to legal. So to follow up on Representative Cooper's question, will this make any changes in procurement of contracts going forward? And I want to thank the sponsor for working with me in making this where we grandfather in all contracts. But going forward, when you answered Miss Representative Cooper, you said that this would not make any changes. My question to you is, what changes in procurement would this make, or would this make, as amended, would this make no changes in procurement?
Thank you, Representative Beck. Mr. Mundy.
Thank you, Matt Mundy, for the record again. Assuming that the law stays the same, nothing will change now or in perpetuity. But we can't bind the legislature. The legislature can come back and create an entirely new scheme of preferences based on whatever criteria it wants to in 2 or 3 years or next year. And if that's the case, then there would be a potential conflict, because the language is, it doesn't preempt any state laws that are in existence as of the effective date of this act. Okay, so if we're talking about some new preferential scheme 3 or 4, 5, 10 years from now, we would have to come back, and that's what I was trying to explain, is we would have to potentially, as our office would have to deal with the statute and work with the member and decide whether or not we were going to carve it out from this specifically, so that we don't have the courts trying to figure out whether they operated independently of each other or whether there is an actual conflict that they would have to resolve. It's just always cleaner to try to identify any conflicting statutes in the future and then deal with them in the legislation. But to your question, in all existing preferences in the context of public contracting are preserved now and in perpetuity.
Representative Beck.
So what I take from your explanation, and it's very good, thank you, is that if we pass a bill in the future, we're going to be, this could infringe on any type of enhancement that we give it, but everything as it stands today, we're good of. Is that a good synopsis, Mr. Mundy?
Mr. Mundy.
Yes, I would agree with that. Thank you.
Follow up, Representative Beck.
Just thank you to the
You're-
chairman and Mr.
You are
Mundy.
welcome. Thank you. All right, now to Chairman Jernigan, you did request
Yes, I for
to
legal.
be listed, but that was prior to us going out of session.
No, this is for legal.
It is freely, of
Yes.
course. Then you are recognized, sir.
Okay, and gosh, not to beat a dead horse with Cooper and Beck, but in the past, the General Assembly's given, I'm going to give an example, given grants to Meharry to recruit minority doctors. And so if we wanted to continue a new grant in the future, would that conflict with this new current law?
Mr. Mundy.
Existing grant programs that are facilitated by virtue of contracts with an institution of higher education right now that are in full force and effect are preserved. It's conceivable, if there are new ones or they're renewed at a future date, that this particular statute could impact those.
The renewal would.
Yes, if
Okay.
they're amended or renewed, or they're just a new grant program altogether.
Okay,
Chairman Jernigan, follow up.
that's it. Thank you, sir.
He says that's it. All right. Any further questions to legal? I see none. So no objections. We are now back in session. And well, all right, we've got a before the I had a thank you for that, but I've got the Senate status, Chairman. I'd like to know, where are we? Where's this resting over yonder, sir?
The latest report I had was about an hour before I came in here. The Senate sponsor is planning on running it. And that's all I know.
Okay, so today then.
Yes.
Right? Okay, up to date. All right, Representative Chisholm, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. To the sponsor, what's the origin of this bill?
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you. This bill came about, frankly, because we have had some subunits of state government, which I would prefer not to call by name, that have in the past behaved as though they didn't think they were governed by state law. In other words, they felt that they didn't have to comply with what was on the books that every other portion of state government has to apply and live by. This law was brought, and I wrote it, so I'll take all the blame or the credit as you choose, was intended to create clarity and also to pull together various pieces that are scattered throughout the code so that that clarity is enhanced. As I pointed out when I mentioned the first paragraph of this bill, or second one actually, subparagraph 1A, the last portion I called out to your attention was that it applies to any instrumentality of the state that derives its authority from the state of Tennessee. Now, obviously, it can't apply to private organizations, but the intent here is to make it patently clear that a unit of state government is, in fact, as bound by state law as any other unit of state government. So you ask what brought it about. That's it in a nutshell.
Representative Chisholm.
So let me ask the question then. Is this bill in any way or even by unintended consequences, does this bill have the potential to destroy the strides that we made via affirmative action?
Chairman Reagan.
This bill is not intended to do that. I can't answer for unintended consequences, obviously. However, the intent here, like I stated, and I can't be more clear, is that every unit of state government plays by the same rules. And if we have, as was pointed out by legal earlier, if we have something on the books that grants preferences, then it stays in effect. And everybody plays by the same rules. But nobody gets to create their own if they are, in fact, a subunit of state government.
Okay, very good. Follow up, Representative Chisholm.
So what is your definition of preferential treatment?
Are you asking
Chairman
for something,
Reagan.
Are you asking for something beyond the plain English here?
I'll take the plain English.
Preferential treatment is actually a form of discrimination. You can discriminate against somebody or you can discriminate for them. When you discriminate for them, you're providing them preferential treatment.
Representative Chisholm.
Okay, then last thing. So it does sound like this bill is kind of a knock on affirmative action. And, you know, we have to realize too, affirmative action, it was meant to be corrective action. And currently we still have some of those same disparities that we had when we came up with the rule in the first place. So even to take a jab at that program or any other governmental program that were meant to help those who had less of a chance, it was meant for different minority groups just to merely be seen. It wasn't meant to give anyone a leg up. It wasn't meant to give anybody a unfair advantage. It was merely for those that were never seen before, just so they could be seen in the same light as those who were getting contracts. Currently in the state of Tennessee, I use African Americans, for example. In a state where we make up almost 20% of the population, there's only 3.3% of contracts, which is up from the 0.4 that it was back in 2003. So what that means is that even though we're making strides, we still have not made the corrections that affirmative action and programs like that were meant to do in the first place.
Okay, all right. Yes, Chairman, follow up, and then we move on. We've got more requests here.
To that statement, let me again refer you to subparagraph 4. It says this does not preempt any state law in existence as of the effective date of this act that provides preference to an individual or group of individuals. I can't say it any more clearly than that. If it's in effect right now, this law does not affect it. So the example that you brought up, if there are preferential contracting agreements in place right now for any group of population, I don't care how you do it. This is not intended to change that.
Okay, very good. Okay, final question, I hope, Representative Chisholm, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the sponsor. This looks like a subject matter that we need to have a lot more conversation about. You know, it's not something we can rush through in committee. So if it's okay with the chair, I'd like to make a motion to send this bill to summer study so we can have further conversation about this matter.
Okay, we do have a motion and a second, so that will require us for a vote to send to
Mr.
summer
Chair?
study. Yes,
Does the
Chairman.
sponsor get to comment on that?
Chairman, yes. You're recognized. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, this is a subject that has been around for a very long time. We have passed numerous laws on it. As I explained in the beginning, the purpose of this bill is to create clarity. As I explained in the beginning also, I pulled bits and pieces of the code from other places and put them together. I didn't create new ones. This is not something that needs to be studied. It's already in existence. This just creates clarity. Consequently, I would ask you to defeat the motion to send this to summer study. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. As I say, we do have a motion and a second for to send this to summer study. The chair calls for a roll call vote. So with that, Mr. Colton, would you please call the roll? Let's vote. Okay. The status is there's motion and a second to send this to summer study. If you vote in the affirmative, you are complying with the motion. If you vote no, it will not be going to summer study. You'll be voting down on it. Is that everybody clear on that now? Okay. Up to summer, down. No summer. Okay. I'll just put it that simple. Go, Colton, you're up. Go.
Alexander. Beck.
Yes.
Beck votes aye. Bricken.
No.
Bricken votes no. Carr.
No.
Carr votes no. Carringer. Carringer. Chisholm.
Aye.
Chisholm votes aye. Cooper. Cooper votes aye. Halford.
No.
Halford votes no. Helton. Helton votes no. Holsclaw. Holsclaw votes no. Hulsey.
No.
Hulsey votes no. Jernigan. Jernigan votes aye. Johnson. Johnson votes no. Littleton. Littleton votes no. Marsh. Marsh votes no. Moon. Moon votes no. Powell. Powell votes yes. Wendell. Vice Chairman Eldridge. Vice Chairman Eldridge votes no. Chairman Kiesling.
No.
Chairman Kiesling votes no. Five ayes, 12 noes.
We have 5 ayes and 12 noes. So the motion to summer study fails. We are now back to the, we'll recognize you. Now, Representative Powell, you are still up? No, he says no. So we got a call for the question. I see no objection. We're voting. Those in favor of House Bill 2569 as amended, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. Noes, the ayes have it. We'll move this on out to calendar and rules.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee.
Yes, sir. You're going to calendar and rules. We're now up to item number 3, House Bill 2222. And we are welcoming Chairman Powers. It's good to have you in front of us, sir.
Thank you.
And we got a motion and a second we see that you have an amendment, and would you please give us that drafting code,
I
sir?
do. It's 015977.
015977 is absolutely correct. You're spot on. So it does rewrite the bill, I see.
It does.
Is that right, Chairman? So let's go ahead. I'd like to suggest, if that's okay with you, sponsor, let's get it on the bill. What do you say? All right.
Be great.
So do I have a motion and a second on this? We do. So any objections to the calling of the question? And I see none. So let's vote on amendment number 2, 15977. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. It is now on the bill. And with that, Chairman Powers, you're recognized, sir, with for an explanation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2222 just authorizes law enforcement here in the state to enforce the criminal laws of this state and authorizes them to make arrests for violations of US 8 USC 1324 of the U.S. Code, Section 2. The Tennessee Post Commission shall develop law enforcement training program that explains how officers can make arrests in compliance with 8 USC 1324. This pertains to anyone who facilitates bringing illegal immigrants into our state or harbors illegal immigrants in our state. Section C, USC 13241 gives the authority to arrest all the officers whose duty it is to enforce criminal laws. We've had a lot of people transported into our state. They have been flown in the middle of the night to Knoxville, Chattanooga, and who knows where. We don't know where they were transported, where they came from, or where they're going. The governor actually requested from the president information regarding those that had been transported to our state. And as far as I know, we've not had any response. You know, the most important duty of our government is to protect our citizens of the state. So we need to know who's coming here. And so what we are talking about in this bill is just those that are transporting or harboring the illegal immigrants, not the illegal immigrants themselves. That falls under federal law. We're just talking about people that are transporting or facilitating or harboring those that come here. So this does not conflict at all with federal or state laws. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion.
Oops, there we go. Thank you. Thank you, sponsor. Appreciate that. Yes, we do. We have questions. And with that, we're going to turn our attention to
Marsh.
yeah. Well, we've got testimony too, but we want to turn first of all our attention to Speaker Marsh. Speaker, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Powers,
Yes.
I think that the way I understand it, that immigration laws are basically all federal. What happens if one of our state officers arrests one of these people? What's going to happen to the person they arrest?
Chairman Powers.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that question. They would not be arresting anyone any illegal alien. It would just be the people that were facilitating or harboring the illegal aliens. And so that just falls under the state law and falls under the U.S. law too, what the penalties are for that. So it's not anything to do with the illegal immigrants themselves, only people that are transporting or harboring them.
Okay, Speaker, you got to follow up?
Yes, sir.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What law would that fall under if you are aiding and abetting? Don't we have some aiding and abetting laws in Tennessee already? Would it fall under those?
Well, it would actually,
Chairman Powers.
I'm sorry, it would actually fall under, I'll read 8 U.S. Code Section 1324. It talks about knowing or in reckless disregard of a fact that an alien has come to, entered, or remains in the U.S. in violation, law, transports, or moves, or attempts to transport or move within the United States by means of transportation, otherwise in violation of such law. So if we do have some laws in effect that are the federal law has given us the authority to enforce, we currently have not enforced those. We've got people coming in to our state and nobody's enforcing those laws. So that's what we're trying to do. Just make sure those laws are enforced and make sure that They get some training on how to do that, and the post commission would be doing that training.
Speaker Marsh. Yeah, sure. Okay. Now, we do, Chairman, do you want to wait? Yeah, there might be some you may have actually a follow-up question following our testimony. So with that, Elizabeth, we're going to ask Elizabeth Stroker, if she would, from the department. Come on up, Elizabeth. Be making your way on up. And if you would, you know the routine, Elizabeth. And we're going to, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give you, we'll give you 4 minutes or 5. I know you do a pretty good job quickly as you do. But anyway, you're recognized. Go.
Elizabeth Stroker, Legislative Director for the Department of Safety, and I'll keep it pretty brief. The department is not authorized to enforce federal immigration laws, even though this doesn't have to do with detaining people in the country unlawfully. This is a federal immigration law. So we do not have that authority unless we have the express consent and agreement with the Federal Immigration Enforcement Agency, ICE, and we don't have that. So what this would do is put into code a federal law that we have no authority to enforce. We would theoretically, I guess, try to arrest them, and then we would release them because we would have no way to prosecute it because, again, it's federal code that we do not have the authority to enforce. Additionally, there is already state law in Tennessee for aiding and abetting or harboring someone who is in the country unlawfully. It's already in the state code. It's already a criminal violation. And so I don't see the need for the federal code being included whenever we can't enforce the federal code anyways. So it seems like this is already covered in state law, and this is just not needed because we can't do it even if it is added into the code.
Oh, good. Sit still. You may, we may have some questions here. Yes, we do. Yes, Chairman Bricken to Elizabeth. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just answer a kind of a general question. If a van load of illegal immigrants was coming through our state with a driver that certainly was possibly illegal too, and y'all safety pulled them over, what would safety do with that van of illegal immigrants?
Elizabeth, you're recognized.
We would reach out to our federal partners at that point.
And what would they do?
Elizabeth.
I can't answer that. They take over at that point because it's federal law. We do not have any jurisdiction for that.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, is it recent examples? Do you know what they do?
I'm not a federal immigration attorney or do not work for their law enforcement, so I do not know. I can only speak for what we can and cannot do.
Chairman Bricken.
The same case, if you had a arrest warrant, went to a house and the owners there were all identified or had no identity at all, so it appeared to be all illegal immigrants. If state law enforcement, what would they do?
Ms. Stroker.
So we are not prohibited from arresting someone who is committing criminal acts. If they are violating state law, we would certainly arrest them and follow normal procedures. But as far as federal immigration laws, we do not have that jurisdiction. We would have to reach out to our federal partners and they would take over at that point.
Chairman Bricken.
Well, I'm not sure if they're partners, but I certainly would like to know the track record of ICE being involved in taking these illegals and doing something with them. I would like to know if we do have an active policy and the federal quote partners are enforcing or doing their role here. So with that, I'll stop, Mr. Chairman.
All right, very good. Thank you for your questions. Elizabeth, we have next Chairman Jernigan, you're recognized.
Elizabeth, can an officer just walk up to someone and ask them if they're documented or not?
Ms. Stroker.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry, I do not know that answer.
Okay. I was just curious. Thank you.
Well,
Happy to find out and follow up, but I
Okay.
just don't know.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Jernigan. Next, we have Representative Powell. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So do you have any programs that you have training for officers to which they have no enforcement mechanism whatsoever?
Elizabeth.
So I'm understanding you're asking if we would train people on things they could not do.
Correct.
No, we would not. That would not be pertinent to their training.
So is it your understanding this would take a lot of time and resources to basically train these officers, just to be clear, train these officers for something they have completely no enforcement mechanism over?
That's correct, but also it's already in state law, this exact thing on the state level. And so it's covered by state law already, and we can't enforce the federal law. So yes, it would not be a good use of resources to train them in something they cannot do.
Follow up, Representative Powell.
And I know you're the state, but do local jurisdictions have the enforcement mechanism as well?
Ms.
Wait,
Stroker.
I don't want to speak for the local agencies, but I know for us, if we wanted to have enforcement mechanisms, we would have to partner with the federal government and have some type of contract or agreement to be able to do so. And I would imagine they would have to do the same.
Representative Powell. No further questions from Representative Powell. Next, we have Chairlady Littleton. You are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's turn the scenario around. There's a van full of refugees and clearly a person, an American driving them. So they're driving these refugees that are here illegally. So what do you do with that driver once you catch them?
Ms. Stroker.
The driver is in the country lawfully. So under Tennessee law, under 39-17-114, that is already that person could be arrested under state law. I'm saying we cannot enforce the federal law. That's the companion. We have the state law on the books, which can be enforced. So that's why this is not needed.
Chairlady Littleton.
So could be or would it be? You said could be.
That law is already on the books. So an officer could arrest and charge someone under that Tennessee law.
So
I
the
don't see
answer
why
is
they wouldn't.
yes. Is that what you're saying? Okay. Chairlady?
If yes is the answer, yes, I'm happy with that.
Okay. She concludes, and now let's direct our attention to Chairman Moon. Chairman Moon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Stroker, do you have any direct personal knowledge of anyone that's been arrested under current law?
Elizabeth?
I do
you're
not.
recognized. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Moon. Chairman Hulsey, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't actually find any way that local state law enforcement could arrest on a federal violation. What court do you do them? Where does it get arraigned? All that. Mm-hmm. But I like the bill, particularly the transportation part. And that's what it was. My question is the word transportation in state law? And the reason I'm saying that is the first captain and co-captain of a commercial airline that lands at Nashville, you put in jail, that'll end that pretty quick.
Ms. Stroker, you're recognized.
The TCA is titled Transportation of Illegal Aliens.
Chairman Hulsey, follow up.
I had one more question. On the bill, at least what I have.
Now on the bill, now are you talking?
Well, no, I'm sorry. I'll wait till
we're out. Yeah, I know it. Okay. No further questions in Chairman Hulsey to safety. All right. I don't see any others. Okay. Well, Elizabeth, thank you. We'll go back into session, and Representative Powell, you're recognized.
I guess I just have serious issues with this bill. Number one is I think that it increases liability for our law enforcement and basically places responsibility on them, which they have no enforcement mechanism over. The second is this word transportation. I guess it's a question for the sponsor and maybe for legal, but I mean, are we getting to a point where literally if you're a rideshare program and you pick up an illegal immigrant, that person under this bill could be arrested for simply transporting somebody that has a rideshare company is literally right. We're going to be arresting Uber and Lyft drivers because they picked up an illegal immigrant under this law.
Chairman Powers.
So I turned my mic off. Yeah, thank you. And going back to your first comment, this has nothing to do with a federal law about arresting illegal immigrants. So that's completely out of it. All we're trying to do if somebody's transporting, if somebody's here legally, if there's an American here legally, and they're transporting and facilitating illegal immigrants into our country, into our state, then they would fall under this law. They could be arrested. And just like the representative said a minute ago, even a pilot that was bringing illegal immigrants into our state. So nothing to do with the federal law. The illegal immigrants fall under federal law only. I would have to go to legal about the Uber situation that you talked about, but we're not really talking about somebody just giving a ride from one person to another. We're talking about bringing people into our state and then transporting them to who knows where.
Representative Powell?
If we could, I mean, I'm curious if I catch an Uber or Lyft in Kentucky in Fort Campbell and I want to come to Nashville, if now all of a sudden I could, under this law, be arrested.
All right, let us, if no objection, we will go out of session and we will turn our attention to legal. Mr. Mundy, Mr. Mundy, you're recognized.
Thank you. Matt Mundy from legal. I'm just gonna stick to the question that's been asked at this point, but the federal law under 1324 requires that there's an element of knowledge that the person's an illegal alien. So if an Uber driver's picking up someone and doesn't have any awareness that the person might be here illegally, then he wouldn't be prosecutable under the federal statute.
Representative Powell, follow up.
So they could be arrested if they were having a conversation with the driver and said, I recently came to this country, that Uber or Lyft driver could be arrested then under the statute.
Mr. Mundy.
I think it's possible. I don't want to say with absolute certainty how that law is interpreted by federal law enforcement agencies on that particular question.
Representative Powell.
No further questions.
No further questions from Representative Powell. So we continue to be out of session. Any further questions to legal while we have him? I don't see any. All right, no objections. Thank you, Mr. Monday. Let's just go back into session. Back to you, Representative Powell. You're recognized.
I mean, my ultimate fear here is for my community as a whole. I mean, I'm proud to represent a lot of immigrants and refugees. And I think this is going to create profiling. Anytime somebody could potentially be targeted, they're a driver and they look like they might be an illegal immigrant, they could potentially be pulled over under this. Somebody that's trying to transport somebody to get, prenatal care, any kind of scenario you want to think about could potentially be a target under this, and will just create an endless cycle of law enforcement trying to look into this. And then also, to me, I don't see why we would have to the Department of Safety's answer, why we would have a training program for something that cannot even be enforced. And then if I'm anyone in the business community and I'm transporting, whether it's the trucking community, the airline industry, the rideshare, the cab industry, you could potentially be arrested, and your employees could be arrested under this piece of legislation. So I just think this is a really dangerous piece of legislation that's going to have a lot of unintended consequences, and it's going to negatively impact communities like mine that I'm proud to represent, and it's going to send the wrong message to a lot of people across the country about the state of Tennessee.
All right, I suppose that concludes, Representative Powell, correct? Okay, well, let us move to our attention to... Oh, I'm sorry. Well, okay, we'll go back to you before. We have another.
I was just going to comment on there. All I was going to say, if you're here legally in the country, you have nothing to worry about. If you've come here the right way, like our forefathers did, and come here legally, you have nothing to worry about under this bill, or the driver or whoever's transporting them. We're just talking about people and that fly. Primarily we're looking at situations like flying people into the middle of the night. Why would they fly them into the middle of the night if it's okay into our airports and then transport them throughout the state? Those are the people that we're worried about, and they're not nobody going back to. And I really appreciate the Department of Safety, but I can't think of anybody that's been arrested. We've seen it on video. We've seen them in Chattanooga. We've seen them housed in Chattanooga. We've seen people in Knoxville flown in the middle of the night. We've seen them in other states in New York, in certain areas, and they're flying them in the middle of the night. And if there's nothing wrong with it, why not fly them in the middle of the day? Why isn't someone arresting the driver or the pilot or whoever is transporting or facilitating them coming into our country. So that's
Representative
my
Powell.
question.
I guess the bottom line is this is not going to change the arrest of those illegal immigrants. This is going to just change the arresting status of people who are simply going about their business and could be liable. And it's going to require all these different companies to basically have to retrain all their employees. And they're going to have to be a screening question to every single person that you ever pick up to say, are you an illegal immigrant? For anybody that's owns a trucking company and is hauling, and has different things that they are, potentially, or a bus company, they're going to have to ask every single person that gets on, are you an illegal immigrant? Or under this, they could be arrested. And I think this is a dangerous bill for Tennessee, and it's not going to do anything, very little, to change a problem that's a federal issue, which is addressing immigration in this country, and once and all, finally fixing a broken system. So.
Chairman Hulsey, you're
wish it would.
recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got to tell you, I appreciate you trying to tackle the problem. I do. It's not an issue of refugees or anybody's here illegal at all.
Exactly.
This is trying to keep agencies, organizations from bringing hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people into this state, and Tennessee has absolutely no say in it. So I do appreciate the fact that you're trying to find some mechanism to deal with it. The federal law issue is a whole nother deal, and I don't know if that's a big hump you're going to be able to get over now, but I do appreciate you trying.
All right. Chairman, do you want to respond to that? And then we'll need to move on.
Let me just read 8 USC Section Code 1103A-8. State and local officers may exercise the civil or criminal arrest powers of federal immigration officers when expressly authorized by U.S. Attorney General when given the consent by the head of the state or local law enforcement agency. So if the state says that we can do this, and that's what we're trying to do. All we're trying to do is get the state to look at that and prevent this from happening, and to train these people when it does happen, what they can do and what they can legally do.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we have a call for the question, and I'm not singling you out, Speaker Johnson, but that call reminded me, please silence your phones. I meant to do that on the beginning of I'm not singling you out, brother. All right, we got a call for the question. I see no objections. We're going to vote on House Bill 2222. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. We are going to do a roll call vote with that. Mr. Teal, up to you. Attention to you. Let's go.
Representatives Alexander, Beck votes no. Bricken votes aye. Carr votes aye. Carringer votes aye. Chisholm votes no. Cooper votes no. Halford votes aye. Helton. Holsclaw votes aye. Hulsey.
I'm in favor of the attempt to try. I don't think you can get over the hurdle, but yes.
Hulsey votes aye. Jernigan votes no. Johnson votes aye. Littleton votes aye. Marsh votes aye. Moon votes aye. Powell votes no. Wendell. Vice Chairman Eldridge. Vice Chairman Eldridge votes aye. Chairman Kiesling.
Yes.
Chairman Kiesling votes aye.
Yes.
12 ayes, 5 noes.
All right, we have the 12 ayes, 5 noes, and the House Bill 2222 moves on. It passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee.
And you're going to calendar and rules, sir.
Thank you.
We are now moving to item number 4, and that is House Bill 916 by Representative Chisholm. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I roll this bill 6 spaces?
You may. House Bill 916 is rolled 6 spaces. Okay, Mr. Whit. That takes us down to item number 5, House Bill 2397. And the request is Representative Mitchell has requested to roll that 1 week. Roll 1 week, members. Okay, item number 6, House Bill 2723 by Representative Miller. Good
Thank you.
afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good to have you with
Members
us.
of the
You've
committee.
already got a motion and a second, and I see that you are working with an amendment. Representative Miller, could you and would you please give us that drafting code?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 015152.
That is correct. Does this rewrite the bill, or how do we need to handle this? Do we need you to give us an explanation of this? You only get it on the bill, this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's pretty
Shall we go ahead and get it on the bill?
Yes.
Okay, let's move. We got a motion and a second, don't we? On this one, on the amendment. And I see no objections to the calling of the question. So let us vote on amendment 15152. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. And now, Representative Miller, we have that amendment back on your bill. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The amendment makes the bill. I think we may have someone from the department if, in fact, we decide we want to go out of session. But the bill as amended, basically, officers, employees of various agencies, boards, and departments of state government are entitled to 5 days of paid leave in the event that a minor child contracts COVID-19, or if a child's school or daycare facility is forced to close due to COVID-19, and the parent, officer, or employee must stay home with the child to provide child care. The paid leave to which an officer or an employee is entitled under this section does not count against the officers or employees' accumulated sick or annual leave. There were some questions in subcommittee, one having to do, will employees be paid moving forward? The answer to that is yes. It's not retroactive, and this bill shouldn't go to government ops, but it's left up to the department to establish the policies and procedures necessary to implement the section. And I'll say, Mr. Chairman, committee, hopefully we never get to that point. You know, prayers, and hopefully that will not happen. But if there's a possibility that we may experience, again, COVID-19, then this bill will go into effect.
Very good. Good explanation. I have a question, Representative Miller, over on the Senate side. Do you know where we are or where they are right now, this moment over there with this?
I believe the bill is in state government as we speak. I think they had maybe 128 bills and it didn't get to it.
Yeah, they're
at this point.
I understand.
But
They're
I think
covered
tomorrow.
Okay, I understand. Now, for the sake to all, well, all right. Let me. I'm sorry. First, let me go ahead and recognize Chairman Halford. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess my question is, does this just apply Monday through Friday, or if it starts on Wednesday and goes Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday, what, they just don't, does that make their 5 days, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, sure. All right, Mr. Miller.
And Mr.
Representative
Chairman,
Miller.
again, the department will come up with the policies and procedures. So they would be able to answer that question for you.
Chairman Halford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you. You're welcome. Chairman Moon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Miller, would this require a diagnosis by a medical doctor in order to
Representative-
qualify?
Representative Miller.
Again, that's a good question. And I suggested, Mr. Chairman, for some of the questions, then the department, once they've come up with those policies and procedures, that could apply or could not apply, depending upon what the department decides on.
Chairman Moon, let me just butt in here just a moment, and say that the department has informed us that they'd be willing to, and we're going to grant them if they want to, a time for any questioning if they want to. But proceed, please, if you may have. Do you have anything follow up on that to the sponsor, Chairman Moon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and sponsor. It bothers me somewhat that we wouldn't go to government ops and have rules promulgated that would be consistent across state government if we're going to have it apply to all the state government.
I got you. All right, let me. If there's no objection, I've just taken us out of session. Mr. Witt, would you please come on up? Now you have heard a couple of concerns here. So I understand then that you guys, if it passes then and moves on into you guys, you'd promulgate the rules then. Is that correct? And please state for the record.
Holtwit, DOHR. Yes, one of the things we wanted to make sure that we talked to Representative Miller about is that we'd be able to develop policy around. Has a doctor determined that the child has COVID? Has the school verified that they're not permitted to return, or they've sent them home for that reason, and those sorts of things? Those are the reasons why we wanted to ensure that our department was able to set that policy across state government, which is what we do for employees across state government currently.
Okay. All right. But while we're there, Mr. Chairman Moon, any follow up on that to Mr. Witt? Okay. Yes, we do. Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Then would it go before GovOps since it is changing rules?
Mr. Witt.
Any new rules would follow the normal rulemaking policy and procedure. So,
Chair Lady.
Okay, and there's no fiscal note on it, so we don't really know what we're voting for.
Fiscal review could not determine a cost given the nature of this type of leave. To my knowledge, we haven't been approached by any department that feels as though they'd be at a hardship as a result of this legislation if it were to pass. But there may be some specific circumstances I'm not aware of.
Okay, Chair Lady.
But would they be using their leave money, or would they just get paid for this time off?
Oh, you're recognized.
As the bill is written, they would not have to use their current leave.
Okay, Chair Lady.
So it would have to have a fiscal note.
Mr. Witt.
I think that'd probably be a question for fiscal review.
Thank
They didn't determine a cost.
Follow up, Chair Lady. No, she says no. Chairman Bricken, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. As far as you know, in the history of Tennessee, have we ever taken a position to grant this kind of leave for any other illness or disease?
Mr. Witt.
There was a federal program that expired in September that did allow for employees to take leave unpaid as a result of COVID. That has since expired. And so we have administered a type of program like this before, specific to COVID. I'm not aware of any other disease-specific leaves, though.
Okay, Chairman Bricken.
So the federal government has at least taken a position by policy that this COVID pandemic is behind us, so they don't feel necessary to continue that benefit at the federal level.
Mr. Witt.
When that program was created by the federal government, they set a September end date, and to my knowledge, I don't know if they're considering renewing it or not.
Chairman, he says no. All right, that takes us to Chairman Hulsey. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just to make sure I understand it, the only difference in this and any other disease, as far as the state's response to it, is the issue that you wouldn't have to milk your sick time if you had to take it off to go home sick or to go home and take care of your kids. That's the only difference. Is that correct?
Mr. Witt.
Yeah, the bill that Representative Miller brought to the committee specified that our only involvement as a department was ensuring that we could promulgate policy around the bill if it were to pass. So this wasn't something that generated in the department, but when we looked at it, we felt as though we needed to be sure that we were in charge of developing the policy around it so that we could ensure people are actually, or their kids are actually sick, or we're ensuring that the schools are making them stay home and that sort of thing, so that we're confident that the employees are taking the leave appropriately.
Chairman Hulsey?
Okay, but under normal circumstances, if you had the flu or your kids had the flu, that would be handled in the regular course of regular business. You'd take a sick day and go home, stay with them, or vacation day and go home, stay with them.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
He says yes. Any follow-up, Chairman Hulsey? Chairman Hulsey says he's finished. Okay. Any further questions then to the department? All right, we're through. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Witt. It's good to have you with us today. All right, we are back. We are back in session. Mr. Miller, all eyes are back to you. Do you have any closing remarks or comments, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Just renew my motion.
He renews his motion. So I see no objections to the calling on the question. We're there. We're here. Let us vote on House Bill 2723 as amended. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. And this moves on to Finance, Ways, and Means. Mr. Miller, you're moving on, sir. Item number 7, House Bill 1916 by Chairman Eldridge. And Chairman Eldridge, you may remain at your seat, sir, on House Bill, as I say, 1916. And I see that, yeah, I've got a motion and a second. And I see you got an amendment. Would you please give us that tracking code, sir?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That tracking code is 15861.
That is correct, 15861. It does rewrite the bill. Shall we proceed in getting it on the amendment on the bill? Chairman, is that
That is
your
correct.
wish?
Yes.
That is his wish, and he hopes it will be granted. Do I have a motion and a second? We do. We have a motion and a second, and I see no objections to the calling of the question. Let us vote on amendment 15861. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. That amendment is now on the bill. You may proceed, Chairman Eldridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill basically just would open up certain state jobs to applicants that do not have a 4-year degree. The department commissioners would determine which jobs could be filled by individuals that may have a certificate in a particular field of study, an associate's degree, or maybe are working toward a 4-year degree. And this bill is basically designed to hopefully get some more people working and fill some positions that are open. But the departments do have the discretion as to what jobs that this would apply to.
Okay, very good. Good explanation. Any questions to the sponsor? Yes, we do. Representative Powell, recognize.
I just had a question. It's my understanding that certain positions, once if you have a degree, you might get a bump or raise in pay based upon obtaining that. This in no way is going to impact that, right? I mean, would they have to start at a lower paying schedule?
Chairman?
I would think that would be determined by the department. I mean, that's definitely a possibility if they do not have the degree yet, but maybe they are employed and are working toward their 4-year degree. That bump would probably come in after that. But that's just my thought.
Representative Powell?
Okay, I appreciate that. I mean, I understand what we're trying to do. It'd be great to, still try to encourage people to finish up their 4-year degrees if they're on that track. to do so.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Representative Beck, recognize.
Thank you. And I think I know the answer to my question, Chairman Eldridge, but I wanted to ask you anyway. This doesn't affect requirements for secondary or post-secondary education. For example, if you were advertised, if it required an attorney or a chemist or something along those lines, this does not affect that requirement.
Chairman, you're recognized.
That is correct. The department would just determine in the case of hiring an attorney or something like that, they would definitely be required to have their law degree.
Very good. Thank you so much.
He concurs, correct, Representative Beck? Is that the way we speak it around here? Any further questions to the sponsor? Yes, we do. Representative, or excuse me, Chairman Halford. I apologize, sir.
No apologize, no necessary. Representative Eldridge, the only thing that comes to my mind is I'm reading a part of the amendment here. If there is continuing education that is required, is there a certain time limit that has to be accomplished or not?
Chairman Eldridge.
To my knowledge, there's not a time limit set out in this bill.
No, is that correct? Follow up, Chairman? Follow up? No? Okay. All right. No further questions. I got a call for the question. I see no objections. Let us vote on House Bill 1916 as amended. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. And Chairman Eldridge, you are on your way to calendar and rules. And now we are on item 8, your bill, House Bill 2113. Again, Chairman Eldridge, we have a motion and a second. I see another amendment on this one that rewrites the bill. Would you give us that drafting code for the record, Chairman?
That code's 15954.
15954 is correct. Shall we, is it your pleasure? You want to get it on that, on the, okay, on the bill? All right. Got a motion and a second on the amendment. We do, and I see no objections to the calling of the question on Amendment 15954. Let us vote. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. Ayes have it. And now, Chairman Eldridge, that amendment is on your bill, sir. You may proceed with a description, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill requires that the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse, Department of Corrections, and Department of Human Services to work with a nonprofit charitable organization that focuses on human trafficking, advocacy, and education to mandate annual training appropriate department personnel in the identification, intervention, prevention, and treatment of human trafficking victims, and in the proper action that should be taken when dealing with a known or suspected victim of human trafficking. The personnel must be informed of the resources and the agencies available to provide help and services for the victims of human trafficking. And the training that's selected by the departments must be submitted to and approved by TBI's Human Trafficking Advisory Council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman, for that explanation. All right. Do we have any questions to the sponsor? We've got a call for the question, and we are, okay, and I see no objections to the call on the question. Let us vote on House Bill 2113 as amended. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, like sign. The ayes have it, and it moves on to calendar and rules. And that, members, we have 3 minutes until 3 p.m. Chairman Hulsey, your chairman here, and his staff have all got to be over in a committee in 3 minutes. So if there is, we do the remaining bills will be rolled to next week's calendar. I need a motion. I got a motion to adjourn. Those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Ayes have it. We are adjourned.